Welcome, everyone, to the Living in Oneness Global Program. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and it's great to be with you. We have a fabulous program in store. I'd like to invite my guest, Hazel Henderson, just to say hi real quick. You can see a picture of her here on camera. Do you want to come in and say
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and sorry we couldn't do the video, but at least we can be on the phone together.
Okay, fantastic, Hazel. We got a wonderful program in store. You're going to hear a lot more from Hazel shortly. This is going to be a very informative hour. We were just chatting about the last 3 months, and wow, has there been a lot going on in the world or what? So we're going to get to a real strong program here. This is a live video format, as you can see, that we're using most weeks when we do our Living in Oneness Summit, our 12 Spheres broadcast. These broadcasts are usually on Thursdays. We're super excited about adding live video to our weekly programs this year. Okay, a little about Humanities Team as we get started. Our focus in Humanities Team is awakening ourself and the world to oneness. We see one presence, the divine, and see we are all emanations of this one presence. It doesn't matter how far our lives may be from reflecting this truth. It's still true. Our invitation is to live as authentically as we can, as an emanation of the divine, and in this, we give our lives purpose and meaning. All of life is a manifestation of the divine, so this means all of life is sacred and should be treated as such. Okay, as we begin, I'd like to invite you to share your questions during this program. The earlier in the program, the better. My assistant, Caroline Chang, is going to come in here to just share with you how you can share your questions with us, and we'll bring these in. Again, this is a live program, so we'll bring these in to Hazel during the program. Caroline.
Thank you, Steve. Welcome to our Living in Oneness webinar. You can ask questions. On the right-hand side, there is a panel. And by using that panel, you'll see where it says questions. If you click on the plus sign next to that question, it'll open that window and you can type in your question right there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Okay, looking forward to your questions. And again, as comments and questions are welcome, bring them in as they come to you. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to introduce now our special guest. Hazel Henderson is the founder of Ethical Markets Media, LLC, and the creator and co-executive producer of its TV series. She is a world-renowned futurist, evolutionary economist, a worldwide syndicated columnist, consultant on sustainable development, and the author of the Axiom and Nautilus award-winning book, Ethical Markets, Growing the Green Economy, and 8 other books. Welcome to Hazel to the Living in Oneness Summit. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you all. I think, that I wanted to just mention that my company, Ethical Markets Media, which was started in 2004, is a certified B corporation. And I know all of us who are signed on to the idea of conscious business know about B corporations. That means a benefit corporation, where your charter is about to serve the whole. And so we're a proudly certified B corporation. I just wanted to say that.
Fantastic. And we're going to talk about B Corps and the Conscious Business Initiative, which we work closely actually with the B Corps on people, planet.
I knew you did. That's why I wanted to make sure we got that out there.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that in. And we add presence, this 4th P, which is the sacred in life, which is kind of the beingness component. So, but we'll get to that. Let's go ahead and start right at the top here, Hazel. And I thought, we shared, boy, the last 3 months have just been so challenging for many. So as we begin, let's talk about the big picture. What are the most critical issues facing the U.S. and the world today? How do you see things moving? And in your opinion, Hazel, are things getting better or worse?
Well, let's just sort of pull back and take a wide shot and look at the whole process of the human family right now on this beloved planet, and the globalization issues that have all come to the fore. And basically, I just wrote a blog for my colleagues at the American Sustainable Business Council, and I'm sure a lot of the people on this call know ASBC. It represents many thousands of small businesses who are committed to sustainable development. And they asked me to do a blog about the big picture. And basically, the question they were asking is the shift, the great shift that I write about so much, from fossil fuels to renewable, clean, green energy and what I call the next solar age of human development, is it now on hold, or what's the prognosis for the future? And rather than just cite all of the research that we do around here that shows very clearly that not only is the shift to the solar age still on track, but it's actually accelerating, partly because of the fact of what's been going on in the politics of the U.S. and that the Trump administration, threatening to pull out of the climate change agreement which Obama and the Chinese government signed on to last year. But I thought it might be better to just pull back a little bit more and look at the whole process of globalization and how we need to reframe it. And, the globalization that began in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan here in the U.S. and Margaret Thatcher in Britain was a very narrow form of globalization. It was all about, based on economic growth as measured by GDP, all about money, and it was all about privatization and deregulation, and it couldn't last. It couldn't go on that way, because there was this single focus on making money. And we all know from a higher consciousness point of view that money is just information about tracking and keeping score of our activities, and it's not real. It's kind of an expression of our values. It's sort of a meme that we happen to all believe in. And so to try to drive a global process with no scorecard except GDP growth, which is just kind of this cash flow thing, and allows companies to, quote, externalize from their balance sheets all the values that most of us live by, not only clean air and clean water, but higher ethical values, the values of inclusion and justice and fairness and all of those things that you cannot put into money terms. So many of us remember the Battle of Seattle, which took place in 1999 around the World Trade Organization, that was promoting this form of globalization, all about just money, 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 money. And what happened was that a new organization began out of that battle between, a lot of business people who think the way we do, but also environmentalists and NGOs, objecting to this very narrow form of economic globalization. And out of that grew an organization started in Brazil called the World Social Forum. And that was in contrast to the World Economic Forum, where the old form of money globalization, all of the big shots would meet there in Davos and wheel and deal about their business opportunities. And so it wasn't really until 2016, with the election here in the U.S. and with the Brexit vote in Britain, that form of globalization now has been called to account. And so what we're really doing now is realizing that we are one human family, and you can't repeal the globalization that we've created, we humans, you know, with our globe-girdling technologies and satellites and jet planes and everything else. But we didn't write any rules for how to manage or how to go to the next stage of growing ourselves, you know, in a more mature way. And so that's what's ahead of us now, is the new agenda of globalization. I'm calling, and this is a made-up words, I'm calling it green globalization. So it's both local and global, and it's really all of us talking about this great shift to cleaner, greener, more equitable, sustainable economies all over the world. And it's all happening at a global level, but it's nothing to do with the old nation states fighting each other. This is all going on with social networks, and it's a completely different kind of globalization. So what's on our agenda, I think, going forward is how do we globalize human rights? How do we globalize environmental protection? How do we globalize fairness? How do we globalize, you know, adequate minimum wages? Or maybe even universal basic incomes? All of these issues now of a mature human family are the ones on the agenda.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, yes, just to summarize, as you mentioned, and I think the reason that you got into this personally, and I want to share your personal story here in just a moment, Hazel, because I find it fascinating and something that maybe we can all relate to. When you came into this, you were looking at these purely financial measurements like GDP, you know, just economic growth, and you just started asking the tough questions of, well, gosh, what if we're getting economic growth, but there's no transparency, and we're raping the earth, and humanity is being underserved and even marginalized. So I just so applaud you and your work. You're a real pioneer in this area of the new economics. So let me bring in, Hazel, your story, if you don't mind, because you often share that you were what you called an ordinary housewife,
Yeah.
but you engaged in self-study of economics that enabled you to become what you are, where today you even will challenge Nobel laureates. So with
Yes.
with the wisdom and the knowledge that you have. The other piece connected to this I wanted to bring in is that you also share is that your daughter, one of the catalysts I think you said for coming into this work was that your daughter came home stained with soot, and you had a persistent cough, and your neighbors did as well. And so this led you to this whole inquiry into Citizens for Clean Air, and now all of the things that you're doing now. Can you share
Yes,
this personal story?
that's
It's
part of
amazing.
Starting Citizens for Clean Air in New York City was kind of, you know, a very human response to a situation where we were all young mothers in the play park in New York City, right under the shadow of the consolidated Edison power plant. And that soot was real. It was coming down into the sandboxes and all these little kids, you know. But my story of how I got into all of this started even earlier. And I grew up in Britain, and I was raised by two very strict atheists. And in a way, that's a very invigorating way to start out, because immediately I began to search for my own spiritual path. And, you know, why am I here? All of those basic questions that we all have to ask, you know, what am I doing on this beautiful planet? And I, you know, went around all of the religious traditions and ended up sort of putting together my own spiritual path. And in a way, I haven't shared this ever before, but with this group I can. I grew up in a rather dysfunctional and often violent family situation. And basically, my unraveling of that situation was the fact that my father, Britain is a very patriarchal country still, and my father had complete control over my mother because he had all the money.
Oh.
And so he controlled her all the time by keeping her always short of money. And so I began to think of this at a very, very young age, because my mother was really a wonderful, wonderful woman, and there were 4 of us children, and she called us her jewels. There was always room on her knee, and she would put her arms around you and read books to you, and all of that. So she was my role model, but I couldn't get over that she was the one that kept getting trashed all the time. And so at a very early age, I decided to try to figure out what was it about this money thing. How was it that my dad could control her through this money thing? And so that kind of started me off thinking about this. And so, when I was in New York City as an adult, and a mother, I still had this basic understanding. Well, how is it that these big corporations, like the power companies, all based on money, how is it that they can pollute the air that my kid has to breathe? And how is it they don't have to account for their social and environmental impacts and costs, and that on their balance sheets they're allowed to just count up the money for the shareholders and so-called quote-unquote externalize any of these hazardous effects that they would have on other people and taxpayers and the environment. How could they get away with that? And so I began reading economic textbooks, and I found to my amazement, oh my gosh, well, the textbooks say they're allowed to do this. And then I found that the textbooks had this amazingly strange view of human nature, that we were all competitive and greedy and acquisitive and envious, and that was the way people were, and that we were all in competition with each other for who could make the greatest gain in terms of money. And I thought, that's not a real view of human nature. Humans also love to give and care for each other. And so I became profoundly suspicious that if we had an economy that was based on this kind of worldview, it would be like running your economy on the 7 deadly sins. And so that was how it all started for me. And I decided, okay, I'm going to research the love economy, which was all of the wonderful unpaid work of raising children, serving on the school board, all of the things basically that my mother did and never got any recognition for. So if anyone wants to know more about the love economy, they can go to my personal website, hazelhenderson.com, and you'll see a 9-minute video there which explains all about the love economy and why all the economic textbooks were simply wrong.
Wow. Simply.
And so, of course, I never went to college, and it wasn't until I tested all of these ideas and began to, I joined up with Ralph Nader, and we were going to go to the annual meetings of corporations and raise all of these other human values that we had. And then I began to write about all of this. And the first article I wrote was about my experience at Citizens for Clean Air. Constantly having to deal with these big corporations, and being told that I was a Marxist or something, all kinds of stuff like that. And so I wrote this very long article about the social responsibility of business, and I sent it with a very belligerent letter to the only woman that I could find on the masthead of the Harvard Business Review. And the amazing thing is that about 3 weeks later, I got a phone call, and this person on the phone said that he was an editor of the Harvard Business Review, and was I the lady that wrote the article about the social responsibility of business? And I said, yes, that's me. So he said, well, we're going to publish it. And I mean, honestly, I just laughed because I couldn't believe it, you know. So that's how things started for me.
Okay.
And so I ended up, once you get something published in the Harvard Business Review, this was in 1967, after that, everybody assumed I had a PhD. I kept getting invited to speak at business schools. And I would say, well, look, I don't know about, they'd ask me to give a lecture on business ethics. And I'd say, well, don't you have a professor of business ethics? What do I know about business ethics? I just wrote this one article. No. They said I didn't have a professor of business ethics. So I would say, well, okay then. I might as well go and talk to these students. So literally, that's the way things happen for me.
Fantastic. I love your story because it's from such humble beginnings you rise to now have the voice and the impact that you do, Hazel. It's wonderful. Well, okay, let me bring in a few things here. You were sharing, your own spiritual path, and one of the things that you talk about here is becoming a whole human being. I'm guessing that is tied into your spiritual path is tied into what you call a whole human being. Can you talk a little about that? And then let's go into this love economy, because I suspect that leads us right into that as well.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, it really, it's very much sort of based on what I learned from my mother, and the whole thing is that so many people, when you go through an academic education, like a 4-year college degree or whatever, you get very narrowly focused because you have to pass your exams and all of that. And it turned out to me that it was sort of a blessing that I never went to college, because I could just pursue my own spiritual path and my own passions and interests as they came up. And when I was curious about things, I could go to the library, get books, but then I could also learn to verify stuff I was thinking about in political action, being an NGO. And, if we thought, there was one of the things we did at Citizens for Clean Air, we had block captains in every one of the 5 boroughs, and we decided to promote the whole idea that GDP should be corrected because it was mixing up the bads and the goods, instead of just deducting the bads, the pollution and all of that. It would add them all up as if it was all kind of useful product. And so the kind of things that we were promoting, were at that level. Hey, let's get the scorecard straight. And back then in the 1960s, Senator Robert Kennedy was running for the Senate in New York City. And we took him on a helicopter ride around New York City to show him all of the pollution coming out of all of the various chimneys, as well as all of the little houses, that were cooking their own garbage and all of that. And we got to sort of explain to him that Citizens for Clean Air was trying to correct the GDP, so that it would also include environmental protection and poverty gaps and education and health, because we have all those statistics. Why don't we use them, And so he, after that helicopter tour, which I still have the letter he sent me thanking me, I have it framed up in my office, he gave that wonderful speech at the University of Kansas in 1967 about GDP, saying that, my gosh, GDP measures only money, and it overlooks all the things that make us proud to be Americans. It doesn't measure poetry or, the love we have for our children or the care we take for the environment. It's a very famous speech. And so basically, when you start learning at that level, which I did, you're constantly testing it with your own experience. It's like, okay, I have this idea that GDP should include all these other things, and subtract all the pollution and whatnot. So, okay, let's see if we'll run it up the flagpole and see if we can organize a bake sale around it. And we did. You see, we had hundreds of thousands of members. And so that was the way I kind of verified what I was thinking and writing about.
Fantastic. Hazel, let me, and we've got questions from listeners. I'm going to go to some questions here in just a second. But the love economy, just briefly, what's the brief encapsulation of that? What do you describe?
Oh, okay. Well, when you go to the visual, which is at hazelhenderson.com, you see a picture of a 3-layer cake with icing on the top. And that represents a total economic activity in any society. And the top layer is the icing, and that's like the private sector, where everybody's free to innovate and start small companies and whatever. We all love the private sector. And it rests on the next sector down, the next layer, which is the public sector. And that's all of the taxpayer money that goes for schools and libraries and hospitals and airports and whatever, research. And then those two top layers are the only ones that are in the economic textbooks, and they're the ones that are all conducted in money. But there are two lower layers which are invisible to the economics profession, although many other disciplines follow them. Sociologists and anthropologists and ecologists. The next layer down is the love economy. And that's 50% of all of the productive work that is done, but is unpaid. And that includes all the things I was talking about before, raising children, serving on the school board, all of the volunteer activities. And now there's the whole open source movement, where lots and lots of programmers and people would rather work free as volunteers doing what they want for their own personal spiritual satisfaction than be paid, if they couldn't find anyone to pay them. And so that layer, the love economy layer, is growing probably more than any of the other layers, but of course it's not noticed in all of the national statistics by economists because they don't even notice anything that's unpaid. And then the bottom layer of the cake is Mother Nature's productivity, which economists also don't account for. And so, the whole thing rests on the productivity of nature. And that's the 3-layer cake with icing on the top.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. Yeah, so open source and all of these things, as you mentioned, that your soul calls you to, that doesn't have monetary value. That's what you describe as the love economy.
That's the love economy. Yeah.
Okay, let me get to some questions here, Hazel. Francine, boy, she's been a close partner of Humanities Team over the years. She's out of Canada, and she says, I'm sending you a big thank you for the work you guys are doing in Humanities Team. She says, what are the first steps we can do to become a socially responsible business person, Hazel? I'm going to bring in the Conscious Business Declaration in a minute to talk about that too. But
yes,
first,
my gosh, that's the first thing to do is Yes, the first thing to do is to sign that conscious business manifesto, right? But then, really, I think the way all of these socially conscious business startups happen is that people find they're looking around and they're seeing what needs to be done in the world, and which is not being rewarded by the official cash GDP measured economy, but still needs to be done. And so people now are looking at all of these areas and saying, well, can I figure out how to meet this need and figure out how to get enough compensation for it so that I can make a viable living out of it? And so I think this is really how it started, is that looking around for what needs to be done. And you can look at this at the city level and the small town level now. And there are many examples all over the world where you would find a town. There's many towns. I know about this in Brazil because I used to teach at a business school there. But you would have a town where there's a whole lot of needs and a whole lot of unemployed people. And so you would find the mayor and the city council would say, okay, well, we're going to divine sort of coupons or chips so that if we have garbage that has to be picked up, we'll say to all these unemployed kids, okay, if you pick up the garbage, you can earn chips, which can be cashed in as a seat in the local community college, or you can use it as access to parks and playgrounds and whatever. And so many cities, the most famous case of this is the city of Curitiba in Brazil. And so out of this whole understanding, there are hundreds and hundreds of local currencies where people say, okay, if what needs to be done is that I can't get any cash, the national, cash, hey, we can create our own money in our own community, clear our own markets, and it keeps the money home. Because it's not valuable anywhere else but in this town, but we can circulate it and meet people's needs. It's like, a more advanced way of doing barter. So I have been looking at all of these kind of ways that people have learned to serve the needs that are unserved in the cash economy. And there's a whole new round of it today, which we can get into later. But basically that's how socially responsible business models generally start.
Yeah, fantastic. Finding that intersection where we're doing conscious work, which is to say it's mission-based work that's about more than financial profit. There's something else that leads us in, just like an organic farmer wants to create nutritious, healthy food for the community and, of course, create revenue and profits that sustain the business. But the mission that leads us in is the conscious work,
yes,
whether it's creating healthy.
That needs to be done. And here's a good moment to talk about cooperative enterprises, because most people in the USA don't realize that the cooperative enterprises around the world actually employ more people than all of the for-profit companies in the world put together. And if you want the reference for that, you can go to UN, that's United Nations, UN.org, and go to the year of the cooperative, which was that was the year 2012. And see, most people don't realize that you can meet these needs, these unmet needs, through all kinds of different forms of enterprise. It can be for-profit, where only the stockholders get the profit, or it can be profit sharing, where all the employees share the profits, like with ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans, or it can be cooperatives. I mean, like I invest in cooperatives, like, it's just as easy to invest in a cooperative. It's rather like getting a CD from a bank, except you get slightly higher interest rate than you would from the bank. And I mean, this is a fair trade group called Equal Exchange. They're based in Boston. And when I put an investment into this cooperative, I know that the coffee and tea and all of the products that they produce, that the farmers are getting a decent living. And that improves the quality or the taste of the coffee that I'm drinking.
That's
that
wonderful.
Little spiritual special.
Yeah, I love your heart, Hazel. And let me bring in Hazel, as I mentioned, she's a founding signatory of the Conscious Business Declaration. And I want to, if you go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org, you'll see the site. There are 4 NGOs that from around the world that created the declaration. Humanities Team, this organization, the Club of Budapest that Urban Laszlo leads, based in Europe. The Sanji family leads the Goi Peace Foundation in Japan, and then the Fowler Center for Business out of Case Western Reserve University. These are the 4 NGOs that created this Conscious Business Declaration. It's for global business, so it could smaller businesses and also Fortune 500 businesses. People like Paul Pullman, who's the CEO of a public company, Unilever, based out of Europe, is one of the founding signatories. Lance Secretan, who ran Manpower, is a founding signatory. Ethel is a founding signatory. And the reason I bring this in is because this creates this definition of what a conscious business is. I'm going to actually just read you real briefly the preamble and the first 4 provisions, because people that are interested in right livelihood, Hazel was saying, find a need, and fill it, and make sure that you're coming at it from a conscious direction. So we're generating positive change in our community and in the world as we're creating profits, not just, we're not a GMO, we're not doing animal farming that is inhumane.
Right.
The focus is positive change. So here's the beginning of the Conscious Business Declaration. Again, this is the consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. It says, as a global community of business leaders, we're committed to developing the awareness and the skills needed to consciously evolve our organizations in alignment with these principles. And then I'll just read the first 4. 1, we are one with humanity and all of life. Business and all institutions of the human community are integral parts of a single reality, interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. And that's the definition of consciousness, where we see everything is connected to the one thing, which we call the divine, but others will call life. There are many terms that we can bring to this. Number 2 principle is, in line with this reality, then the purpose of business is to increase economic prosperity, but while contributing to a healthy environment and improving human well-being. Then 3, business must go beyond sustainability and the philosophy of do no harm to restoring the self-renewing integrity of the earth. And then 4, business must operate with economic, social, and ecological transparency. Now, there are 3 other principles as well. I don't want to read the whole thing, but if you go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org, if this resonates, see if you get an inner yes when you read it. And if you do, we encourage you to sign it, invite your friends and family and coworkers to sign it. When you sign it, you become part of the conscious business movement. There are things that we'll tell you about, including a course that allows you to become a conscious business change agent. It's a designation where you can launch and transform businesses into conscious businesses, and also a designation that will be coming out this summer that allows the whole business to be designated to carry the conscious business label in one of either a basic form to more advanced forms. So that's something that's coming. So
that's so great just to hear that again, because the amazing thing is, of course, that this is totally not only spiritually the core of the human family and the experience as part of the life and the biosphere of this planet. It's totally interdependent, but it's also good science. I mean, naturally. Of course we're one species, and of course we interact with all of the other species. And the only income this planet has, every day is the free photons from our mother star, the sun. And that's the source of abundance on this planet. And most economic textbooks are sort of driven by this idea of scarcity. And out of the idea of scarcity comes competition. Oh my gosh, we've got to all fight each other for resources. And yet, the abundance, the free photons from the sun, all we need to do is to capture them as well as Mother Nature learned how to do. Our very first technology on this planet was photosynthesis, where plants learned with their green leaves to collect the photons, and that's what is the basis of our food supply. So this is science as well as spirituality.
Yes, it absolutely is. And this is, you could call it engaged spirituality, because many people teach wonderful courses like on mindfulness and other things, but in the case of conscious business, there's an education component, but the whole purpose is to train people and to affirm organizations as conscious individuals, as conscious businesses, and then the real good work happens, because we now are we're businesses that are generators of positive impact in the community, for the planet, for humanity, for the community.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's about engagement. If we don't engage, I remember once being at a peace conference which Oscar Arias, the president of Costa Rica, was running, and the Dalai Lama was there, and it was just a wonderful group of people, and we got into this whole right livelihood thing, and people would say, well, there was this kind of thought that, well, it's one person at a time, that I have to do the work on myself. And I was coming in and saying, well, yes, after you've done right livelihood and after you figured out, then what are you actually going to do about it? Because, the other half of it is engagement and figuring out how to actively express this in the world. In other words, it's both and. The mindfulness and the spiritual path of personal work is necessary, but I don't think it's sufficient.
No, because we have to be an activist too. There's the inner journey component,
yes.
Or spiritual or meditation, whatever we want to call it, but that dimension of going within and being, connected and transformed by the divine. But there's the activist component of, after all, we live on an earth that's challenged.
Yeah.
And we are all one.
Yeah.
So that means that,
exactly.
And
so,
so we have to bring in positive change.
Yeah, well, that's why I started Ethical Market
And Hazel, I was just going to go to a question here that relates to this. Exactly. Yeah. It's wonderful, and then your story, how you brought in Robert Kennedy and others to really put a focus on what then in the 60s probably was getting very little focus. That
there was always luck too, being the right place at the right time.
Not just financial stuff. Right.
Is someone asking me a question? I can't hear.
Those synchronicities happen, I think, when we have a pure.
Did somebody
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there's a sort of another voice in the background.
I'm going to stop. Yeah, let me bring in can you hear me, Hazel?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question. This is from Janice. She says, I live in the UK. It's amazing to see how much what goes on in one place really does have effects on other places on the planet. How do we come together as a planet to create positive change?
Well, we're doing it right now, wouldn't you say?
Did you catch that, Hazel?
We have all these wonderful communication
Absolutely.
tools. And, you know, that's the beautiful thing, that ideas travel fast, people share. I mean, the speed with which the shift is going on now from fossil fuels to clean, green energy and to fulfilling the goals, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which we are tremendously supportive of. You know, the 17 goals that 195 countries have now signed on to are the goals that we need to fulfill and to create the world that we want, and this brighter, more abundant, clean, green, knowledge-rich future that we know is totally possible. So, you know, for me, the reason I started Ethical Markets Media is that I realized that the story of this green transition speeding up as it is now because of all of the interactivity and social media and one thing and another, that it was not going to be told by the mainstream financial TV shows or magazines, because all of their advertising came from the fossil fuel industry or nuclear power, you know. And so I thought, okay, we'll be an online company, and we'll spread all of this stuff online, which, as you know, is so much less expensive. And so our TV shows are distributed all over the world to business schools and colleges and public libraries, and basically they're called Transforming Finance. And so often what we forget is that corporations, particularly the big corporations that traded on stock exchanges, are kind of puppets of the old financial model. And so we've paid a lot of attention to actually engaging at the level of finance and retraining asset managers who are still working on this old cash flow model, that the whole thing is about money. And we've been teaching them that there are actually 6 forms of capital, and only one form of capital is money. There's intellectual capital and social capital and human capital and environmental capital and built capital. And the new accounting groups, which I've been working with a lot, they are now accepting this, and that their model is that they should, when they go in to measure a corporation's performance, they are measuring the extent to which the corporation is either enhanced or degraded all 6 forms of capital, not just the cash.
Right.
So this is the paradigm shift. See, and all of these things are going on under the radar of the old mainstream financial media. So that's why we report all of this stuff, and we report, I mean, gosh, I'm doing it every day. We have a daily RSS feed, and that's why we do the Green Transition Scoreboard, to show people how much private investment is going into green sectors all over the world. Our current total is $7.1 trillion. Cumulatively since 2007. That's how much money investors have in the pipeline toward building this whole new solar age economy, which is the next stage of human development.
Yes, and it is it is alive and well and growing. As you mentioned, it's not getting all of the publicity, but this what's happening in the world. We talked about this, Hazel, coming onto this call with the election in the U.S. and immigration challenges and other nationalist challenges, etc., around the world, is just spurring people to action. I think there's more and more the recognition we can't sit up in the stands. We all need to come down on the field and participate. So there's good news. Yeah, there's often they say there's chaos, challenge before the breakthrough. So we're progressing through that. Here's another question that came in from Cassie in Seattle. She says, "Hi, Steve. I love the idea of conscious business. Thank you. Thank you to Hazel for sharing her story about starting her work in the world. How did Humanities Team get started in doing this work?" This is again from Cassie in Seattle. Cassie, we got started because we looked at things like conscious commerce and natural capitalism and these other models that are creating progressive business by focusing on people, planet, and profit. But we realized, along with our partners, I mentioned these other NGOs around the world that came together with us to form an alliance, that we needed consciousness in the model, in the definition of conscious business, which is this oneness, this interconnection, interrelated interdependency of all of life. That where we come from that place, then the windshield of the business is looking out on the sacred, and it's kind of the game-changing thing. It's the aspect of being connected to the one, to the divine, and in the divine, all we can, the only work that we can do is healthy work. We have to be a generator of positive change. It's no longer about just financial profit. That's a necessary component, but it's the mission of the business where we're creating things like the photosynthesis and all of these wonderful these co-ops, these things that Hazel's bringing in that speak to the positive change that's happening all over the world. It's underreported, but there's a lot of positive change going on.
Oh, it's amazing. And, we don't try to be directly kind of retail because that's really not our mission. What we are really is a network of global networks. And mostly our audience are private investors, mostly in green, ethical businesses, asset managers, NGO leaders, and trade union people, people all over the world, and the cooperative movements I was talking about before. And basically now we have everything we need. We have all of the communication tools we need. We know how to do solar. We know how to do wind, energy efficiency, all of these new technologies. We don't actually need to do any more research. I did an editorial one time trying to explain that to Bill Gates. He sort of thinks that we need to do a lot more research. We just need to apply what we know to bring it to scale. That's all that needs to be done now. And, the price now of solar panels and wind generators are all plummeting. And so that's driving the older technologies out of the system anyway. And this is why right after the election of Donald Trump, where he was talking about trying to bring back 19th century industries like coal and steel and all of this, basically his infrastructure idea, I wrote an article which is on our website called Greening Trump's Infrastructure Plan. And there's nothing wrong with collaborating around a new infrastructure, because we certainly need it in the United States. But it should be electric vehicles, charging stations, public transportation, smarter cities, all the new infrastructure, broadband for people, all of that new stuff, not just, doing more roads, which is, mostly, what they're talking about, or trying to put coal miners back down the mines, for God's sake. That's history.
Hey, so let me bring in, you're so right. Let me bring in another question, and we've only got, if you could answer this one in a minute, and then give people the web address that people can go to follow you, because I've got to just share a few announcements as we wrap up. But this question is for skeptics, Hazel. What are the statistics that demonstrate the viability today of the green economy? This is from Elsie. Elsie.
Oh, thank you, Elsie. I love that question, because you can go to look at the Green Transition Scoreboard. And that's in depth. We redo that twice a year, and it has all of the new technologies, the new companies, who's doing what to whom, and our update will be out in April. But right now, that's the 7.1 trillion with a T, which is already in the pipeline. Or by now, I think that ASBC might have my blog up about the new kind of globalization. But the best thing really is to go to our website, ethicalmarkets.com, or if you want to watch our TV shows, it's ethicalmarkets.tv.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you, Hazel. So let me just share here a little wrap up. I want to start. Hazel, I want to thank you so much. You are just absolutely fantastic. I love you and your work. And
oh, well, I love you too. Thank you for inviting me.
Hour. Yes, thank you. So I'm going to come back and thank you some more, but I want to just share a little bit here first. So I mentioned, talked about the Conscious Business Alliance at consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. Do check that out, and as I mentioned, you'll become part of this whole global conscious business movement when you sign, and we'll send you updates on things, including how, if you're interested, how you can become a conscious business change agent. There's an intro class that starts on April 10th. It's a 6-week class, and it's only $300. You'll learn more about it when you go to sign the Conscious Business Declaration. Also, as you probably know, we at Humanities Team are in the lead on this Conscious Business Initiative. It's a global effort to transform business. We know our project is ambitious, but with your assistance, we're making real progress. We're inviting you to donate what you can. You'll see in the window $25, $50, even $5 to fund this initiative. We're putting this link in the window. Your support will help us to grow this movement. Also, upcoming programs that you don't want to miss. Join me next week on Thursday, March 9th from 9 to 10 Pacific time. I'm going to have Dr. Michael Gaeta with me. Michael is an alternative health practitioner and educator. He's going to share valuable information for your whole family relating to alternative health care, and he talks about it from the whole basis of oneness. It is a 90-minute live broadcast, so be sure to bring your questions to that program as well. And then the following Thursday on March 16th, Dr. Bill Spady is going to join me and Anna Marie Peters, who's my co-host for these Oneness and 12 Spheres programs. We're going to talk about oneness and education, and it'll be a fascinating program. Bill Spady is doing amazing things all over the world with education that's based in oneness. Then on March 23rd, Greg Braden is going to join me at 11:30 Pacific time. We're going to talk about science and spirituality and our present times. This is another live program. That one's 11:30 Pacific time, March 23rd. So be sure to join us for all of these coming programs. If you go to livinginone.com, you'll see all of the upcoming programs, and you can register to participate. Of course, they're all free, and if you miss a program for 48 hours, there's the opportunity to watch the free video. Okay, this program is focused on living in oneness, so we also want to invite you to Community Circle. It's only $10 a month, and it's a virtual, intentional community for people who are living in oneness. People can collaborate and connect with leaders involved in spiritual activism. They can, you get continuous access to over 350 programs from the Living in Oneness Summit and Global Oneness Day. You can listen year-round with your family and friends. There's also a weekly Heart Circle video broadcast where members come together to share intimately about the successes and the challenges in their life. So these are all things that are part of Community Circle. If you go to humanitiesteam.org, our website, and scroll down to the big rectangle that says Community Circle, you can read more about it. It's only $10 a month, and I think we're putting a link to that in the window here as well. Okay, I'm going to come back and thank you again, Hazel Henderson, for spending this hour with me. Just such a delight, so much wisdom and history here that you shared about yourself and your work and people that you're working with in the world. Thank you, Hazel.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Take care.
Thank you too. And then I want to thank my colleagues, Caroline Chang, Garth Catterall, Nanette Kennedy, and Dee Meyer. They make this whole program possible. And then I'm saving the best for last. Thank you to each of you for being here and participating. We're grateful. And in closing, I want to invite all of us to really live as one. Of course, we're each going to do this in our own way. When we live as one, we draw in the presence, the peace, and the power of the divine. Okay, I'll see you next Thursday, March 9th at 9 o'clock Pacific time, when we'll be talking with alternative healthcare practitioner, Dr. Michael Gaeta. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.